Right. Well, I have a rather ambitious program lined up here. We're going to be hearing an interview we did with Cliff Richard several months ago. We're going to replay that. And, Cliff went back into the studio, and he recorded Fabulous on his Fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook CD last year for Rhino Records, and he went back again recently. Now, I don't know if it's true, but he said he was going to do Butterfly if there was a sequel. So let's see. I don't know for sure, but we'll find out soon enough, I'm sure.
Right.
But Cliff's a great guy, and
Sir Cliff.
Sir Cliff.
And the rule is you have to say it 3 times, and then you kind of weasel in the Cliff.
You mentioned that last year when we had him on the air.
Yeah, you have to do it.
Did we
like
follow that? I don't remember.
We did. We did.
Thank goodness. Well, Joe, as I said, it's an ambitious program. Many people have been asking when your father's autobiography will be available. So I must tell the audience they can actually pre-order this thing.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And again, the title is Rock and Roll's Hidden Giant, the story of rock pioneer Charlie Gracie. It's on Alfred Music Publishing Press. And you can get this now at Amazon.com. And
Pre-order?
And BarnesandNoble.com.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, hard copies of the book will be available in all the stores come January of 2015.
And in this book, I know I'm not letting anything out of saying anything and I shouldn't.
Right.
But I do know that this book will help explain why your dad was such a big hit in Europe and people didn't hear from him here in the United States.
Right. Well, I think we all know he was blacklisted when he, tried to get all of his royalties from his label Cameo, and all that's in the book. But, he's so blessed to have fresh commentary by Sir Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
The foreword is written by Cliff Richard, Sir Cliff Richard.
Yeah.
We are so privileged to have a very special guest with us today. And I'm going to spout off a few figures here. And if I'm off by a couple of million, I think he'll correct me. But this gentleman has sold over 250 million records, globally. 130 singles, albums, extended plays. Remember those, gentlemen?
Yes, indeed.
Which made the top 20 over in the UK. 14 number 1 singles in the UK. And he's the only British singer to have number 1 hits in every decade from the 50s through the 2000s. I think he's in the same company with Elvis there. He's received numerous awards and honors, and of course he was knighted by the Queen in 1995. And who are we talking about? The one and only Sir Cliff Richard.
All I have to say after all that is, cold blimey,
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. What a fantastic introduction. I can't wait to meet me.
I love that. You see what I always tell you, Joe?
Yeah.
It's a gift from God when you're an entertainer. Not only can he sing,
my goodness.
not only can he perform, he's funny.
250 million records. It's hard to believe, really, but I've never really checked up. That was done about 25 or 30 years ago. So I probably sold a couple more, but it's beyond my imagination. Now, I don't know about you, Charlie, but when you first start singing, you don't actually think into the future a great deal. You just go from day to day, and that's what I've done with my career. And suddenly, now that I've been singing this long, suddenly they're saying, oh, this is your 100th album.
Well, sure.
Oh, you've sold 250 million records over the years. I never thought about it in those terms
as a
before.
performer, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, you always look forward to the next gig, before you know it, 50 years went by.
Absolutely. Slips by.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Cliff, that 100th album we're talking about is the Fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook, which is going to be released on November the 11th on the Rhino record label. I believe people can actually pre-order this at Amazon.com, correct?
Yes, they can, actually. And I've called it everybody knows what you're going to get when you hear the title, The Great American Songbook. But Charlie, your song, Fabulous, is on my album. And I thought, I'd like to do something. And I thought, I've called the album The Fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook. And I had somebody from Rhino, the label, they checked up, and apparently nobody's used that title before. So maybe we'll create a new kind of understanding of what rock and roll is by calling it.
Well, you know how I feel about it? When just by naming it that, I already sold 200 million copies myself.
Well, I always knew I was crazy for you, but now I know you thrill me so. If this is love, well, it's fabulous. Your lips close to mine, I got chills up my spine, and when we touch, I thrill so much. this is love, well, it's fabulous. Well, I read in a book about love and its charms, but I never knew until I held you in my arms. When I hold you tight, I know I'm right, 'cause only you can do what you do. If this is love, well, it's fabulous. Well, I always knew I was crazy for you, but now I know you threw me so. If this is love, well, it's fabulous. know I'm right, 'cause only you can do what you do. If this is love, fabulous. If this is love, it's fabulous. Well, if this is love, well, it's fabulous.
What an honor. Thank you so much. I know you like the song, and it's my signature tune when I go over to Britain. Everybody seems to love that tune. It's something about it. It's danceable, it's melodic, and it's got a nice little mess. And you did such a great job on it. I love the arrangement.
Thank you very well. Thank you again. We've kind of we're not trying to compete with your iconic original versions, all those songs that I do on the album. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of paying tribute to rock and roll mm-hmm. and what it was, and in fact, trying to express the influences that you can see now and hear now in the music of today, although it's been upgraded a million times and technology allows you to do things you couldn't do when we were recording.
Of course.
But it's been a fun album to do. I really, really enjoyed it so much.
Well, you know the nice part of it, that those of us that are still alive can appreciate what you did for us.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Cliff, let's go down the list of some of the songs you did. Little Richard's Rip It Up.
Yep.
The Everleys, Wake Up Little Susie.
That one I got, Vince Gill very kindly came in and sang Phil Emily's part for me. So
fantastic.
That part above me is Vince Gill.
Really?
What a gentleman he is, too. A fantastic guy and a great singer.
Yes, indeed.
Wake up, little Susie, wake up. Well, the movie wasn't so hot. It didn't have much of a plot. We fell asleep, our goose is cooked, our reputation is shot. Wake up, little Susie, wake up, little Susie. Well, what are we gonna tell your mama? What are we gonna tell your pop? What are we gonna tell our friends when they say, ooh la la, wake up, little Susie?
Now, you did a couple things by Elvis, Stuck on You, and a medley of Teddy Bear and Too Much, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I couldn't really, Charlie, I couldn't leave Elvis out of it because when I first heard Elvis, it was the original inspiration. I hadn't really, in England, we hadn't heard anything except for Bill Haley, I think.
Yes, yes.
And then suddenly this amazing vocal sounds came out, and the image that he had, that whole thing, he gave rock and roll a kind of look, and it was a great inspiration for thousands of us, and just a few of us got lucky, me being one of them, that we finally ended up with a career in this wonderful rock and roll world.
I don't want to be a tiger. Tigers play too rough. I don't want to be a lion, 'cause lions ain't the kind you love enough. Just want to be your teddy bear.
Well, the thing is this, so you had the talent to follow it up. You know, there's a million Elvis impersonators, but when you can come out and perform and sing and record and have a career over 50 years and people love you,
indeed,
you know, you have your own iconic figure going for you.
Yeah, I guess we all have to find something that's our own, but all of us would be influenced by something in the past. I mean, otherwise, well, what you have to do is take what you hear and make it your own. And I suppose, as you say, that's probably the part that is the X factor, that some of us are able to take that influence, and without jumping on the bandwagon, you can run alongside it and have your own thing. So, yeah, I've enjoyed my 55 years, and I managed to sort of make a sound of my own and create my own world, really.
Well, let me say this to you in all modesty. You know, when I started out, I had nobody to emulate. At least you guys had Gopi. You know, you heard Elvis, you heard Jeff Barry, you heard. I mean, I listened to Fats Waller.
Well, he was pretty good too.
Well, I mean, I had nobody to copy. So the guy said, "Where'd you get your style? How did you start playing rock and roll?" I said, "Well, I was playing it, but it didn't have any name at the time, you know." Until Alan Freed finally introduced, you know, the phrase rock and roll. So I mean, you had to step up on us.
Well, we did, because I was still at school when Elvis came out, and it kind of ruined my schooling, because at the minute I heard all you guys, I wanted to be like you. So
of course.
I wasn't that interested in education anymore, and I just, as soon as I could get out of school, I did, formed a band, and I got lucky. But it was hearing the America will always be, as far as I'm concerned, America will always be the fatherland of rock and roll.
Well, there you go.
It's been a little bit frustrating for me that I never really made it quite here. I've sold a couple of million records here.
Yes.
One was Devil Woman, which was in the Cashbox Top 5, and that sold 1.3 million.
I've had nothing but bad luck since the day I saw the cat at my door. So I came into you, sweet lady, answering your mystical call. Crystal ball on the table, showing the future, the past. Same cat with them evil eyes, and I knew it was a spell she cast. She's just a devil woman with evil on her mind. Beware the devil woman, she's gonna get you. She's just a devil woman with evil on her mind. Beware the devil woman, she's gonna get you from behind. Give me the ring on your finger.
And We Don't Talk Anymore, a few years later, came out, and that I don't know whether it did a million, but we were at number 6 in the charts, and I sung a duet with Olivia. So I've had a smattering of success.
Oh, absolutely.
But, you know, in a way, I haven't minded so much, because it's ironic that I've chosen a country in America that has 300 million people or 350 million people, and I come here to get away from the crowd.
Funny.
You know, Charlie, this is the thing that amazes me. There was one year, and I think it was 1963, in Cashbox or Billboard, I can't remember which one, they had a poll, and it said that I was the biggest selling solo artist, not counting bands, but biggest selling solo artist in the world, and that's before I'd sold a copy in America. Yeah. So that made me feel better about it. So therefore, I've never been embittered by not having a hit here. As I say, I actually enjoy being anonymous here, but I don't mind changing that. If you help me change that, I'll be very grateful.
Where there's life, there's hope.
See, Rhino is famous for bringing out retro music. I mean, that they've had fabulous successes with that rock and roll period, that retro effect. And I want to say to them, look, you not only do you release retro music, here I am signed to you. I am a retro singer.
That's right.
You know, I'm still alive. I can still do it. And I'm just making a new record. So maybe we could go for the whole retro thing and just treat me as a retro phenomena or whatever you want to call it, and see what happens. And if it doesn't happen, I'm no better or no worse off than I am now.
Of course not. Well, you give it a shot, as we say in the States. But you know what? If I was handling you, you know what I'd do? I'm going to give you a suggestion. Tell those people to get you some American television spots.
This rock and roll stuff might be a little easier for me to present on television anyway, because it's very basic. I pretty well did it live with the band in the studio.
Right. Well, that goes back to the beginning of rock and roll, if I may say so, that our music is simple. And that was the success of our music. It had a great beat, had a great melody, and the lyric wasn't that great, but it was love, schmov, and but it was danceable. But I mean, when I hear your reproduction of the things that we made famous, it makes me feel excited again because you're doing it differently, and yet it's still the simplicity is still there. That was the secret of rock and roll.
But it's memorable too. I mean, I love Butterfly.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's memorable stuff. Yeah. And what was the other one you did? Did you write
Wandering Eyes? Was, I mean, top 10 in England also.
I've already put down. I don't like to be a demagogue. When I go into the studios, I try to get a collection of songs and have people like. It's necessary that the record company have some kind of input.
Yeah.
Me to have an input. Maybe the producer have an input. So I've got Butterfly already down for volume 2.
Whoa!
Terrific.
I hope I'm still alive to hear it when it comes out.
No, that's interesting, Cliff, because Fabulous has been covered also by Paul McCartney as well, and a few others. But Butterfly was the #1 song for Dad here, but everyone seems to choose Fabulous to cover.
Well, I think it's become my signature song over in Britain
certainly.
Mostly, yeah. But you know, Wandering Eyes was bigger for me there than Butterfly.
It was.
Yeah.
Wandering Eyes was Butterfly, Wandering Eyes. I think both of those were bigger than Fabulous in England.
Yes, they were. As a matter of fact, Wandering Eyes didn't sell too many in America.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? But you know, that's the thing. The public, in the end, you cannot tell the public what to like.
Exactly.
You put out what you feel is good, or what you've done to the best of your ability, and then you keep your fingers crossed, and sometimes there's something in there that they just love, and they loved your songs. Well, and that's the way it is. That's the way it always has worked.
Well, you know, we all contribute a little, so I feel like a grain of sand when it comes to the music business, whatever little bit that I've contributed. But the thing is, the most important thing, you're a working artist. I'm a working artist. I've been doing this for 61 years, man, and I can't wait to get on stage.
I know. Because I started work in January and it didn't finish till July. And that same show now, Europe wants me to take it there. So in May next year, I'll spend the month in Europe, Holland, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Belgium, France. So it'll be a great tour, and I'm going to do the same show, pretty well the same show. I'm going to add things to it, though.
Yes.
Some from the new album.
Well, I bet they'll scream when they hear some of that stuff, man.
I think they will, and even though they're not my original records, they're so familiar. They'll probably think that Fabulous, Charlie, sorry about this, they'll probably think it's one of mine.
That's okay.
but they won't get it wrong, because I will tell them whose it was.
Hey, listen, you know what? You're very good. I found this thing about you. Not only are you talented, nice-looking kid, but you're gracious. And a lot of big stars are not very gracious. There are a lot of them that are. I mean, I can mention a few, like Graham Nash, who's a wonderful guy. You know Graham.
Oh, yeah, I do.
What a great man he is. And a few
Wonderful.
others. You know, I mean, there's always nice guys and there's always bad guys, but you're one of the good guys.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's mention the CD again. It's called The Fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook by Sir Cliff Richard, and it's on the Rhino label. It will be out on November the 11th, but you can order this thing on Amazon.com. And again, some of the artists that Sir Cliff is covering is Little Richard, Lee Everleigh, Elvis, Johnny Ray, Dad, one of your big influences.
Love Johnny Ray.
Buddy Holly, Rick Nelson, Chuck Berry, Roy Hamilton.
Oh, great.
Johnny Tillotson, Brian Hyland, and Bobby Darin.
Oh, my.
Sir Cliff, can you...
They were all such big successful artists, and their records are so memorable. My record company, you mentioned the word covering. Yeah, I suppose I am covering them, but I always think of a record, for instance, in England, we used to do covers of records. Cilla Black covered Dionne Warwick's Anyone Who Had a Heart at the same time, and had the big #1. So I've said to my record company, don't get bogged down by covering. What this album is a revival. It's a revival of these songs, and for a lot of people, even my nephews and nieces. I've got my nephew staying with me here in Fort Lauderdale. He and his wife are here, and they're hearing my album for the first time. And he just said to me this morning, he said, "That's your album that keeps playing, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I love it. I love all of it." And then they don't even know. I don't think they know about Fabulous. I don't think they know. Of course not.
They're too young.
They're too young. So, and they're being reintroduced. It would be wonderful to revive that whole feeling again.
Well, listen, if we could live another 100 years, we'll have a whole brand new career.
Well, it's funny you should mention another 100 years, because that's what I'm planning on.
There you go. Hey, listen, by the grace of God, one day at a time.
Indeed.
Yes, actually, yes. That's right.
Now, Cliff, you were born October the 14th. You have a birthday coming up, 1940 in India, and your family moved to Britain in 48, and by the time you were 6 16, you had your own band called the Quintones, correct? School buddies?
Yeah, we were at school, and because Elvis and stuff had come out, they always used to get me to do something. I used to do a sort of imitation of Elvis, and at the end of term, we'd have an end of term party, and I said to the guy, I had about four friends, so 5 of us, and we found that we could do harmonies. So a cappella, and so we were digging out things like the Diamonds.
Little Darling,
and anything that Paul Anka's Diana, and I would do a couple of Elvis things in the middle of it all, and we called ourselves the Quintones. But when we left school, that all broke up.
Yes.
But a friend of mine who was a drummer, he and I got together and formed our own rock band, and then we started playing in the bars and clubs and pubs locally, and got quite a name for ourselves. And then, by good fortune, a demo I had made was given to Norrie Paramore at EMI. And he had no one like me on his list. So I was called in, and I went in with a guy called Ian Samwell and a friend of mine from school. And in the bus, going to the audition, Ian started writing a record called Move It, a song called Move It.
Yes, yeah, your first big
hit. And when we got there, we sang that to him. He loved it and said, okay, that can be the B-side. I'll find you a song. And he picked out a song by Bobby Helms called Schoolboy Crush.
Yes.
So I could have been a cover artist because I would have covered it and maybe had success with it. But I met a guy called Jack Good who did TV in England.
Yes, remember Jack.
He was just starting off with a big rock and roll show. And he said, you want Cliff Richard on my show? He cannot sing Schoolboy Crush. It has to be Move It. Yeah. And, the record companies in those days, I think, were a little more pliable, and they just said, okay. And so everything changed. My name came up saying new record, Move It, backed with the other song, and I got lucky again. I got lucky. You have to have a certain amount of good fortune that I had a hit with a brand new song for me, and it led to singers and other writers sending me material to record, and I ended up getting a lot of great material to sing.
Now, John Lennon considered that the first homegrown British rock and roll hit, did he not? Move It.
I know. I love it. I love being able to quote him because he said, before Cliff Richard and Move It, there wasn't anything.
Into your heart and soul. Let me tell you, baby, it's called rock and roll. They say it's gonna die, but honey, please let's face it. Well, they just don't know what's going through the places. Yeah, ballads and calypsos, I've got nothing on. Real country music that just drives along. Please don't lose it, It's rhythm that gets into your heart and soul. Well, let me tell you, baby, it's called rock and roll. They say it's gonna die, but honey, please let's face it. They just don't know what's going to replace it. Ballads and calypsos have got nothing on. Real country music that just drives along. Honey, move it. Hey, move it. Move it. Honey, move it.
Sure.
And I'll say, well, you know, you may think I'm absolutely uncool, but John Lennon said, and I quote it. I love it. God bless John Lennon.
Well, you mentioned Jack Good also, Sir Cliff. Now, I know, Dad, you did a few shows for Jack, 655 special.
Yeah, I was on a show with Petula Clark before she became internationally famous.
Really?
Yeah, she won.
Oh, really? Yeah. Now, was that in America?
No, in Britain.
The 655 special was produced by Jack Good.
Yeah.
57? 58?
Well, it must have been, it must have been Oh Boy.
And then it was, I think Oh Boy followed in 58,
No, I'm
59.
talking about the television show.
We had another one called, wait a minute now, there was one called Drumbeat, and there was, I can't remember, but there was one other show that was very famous. Amazing. And then Oh Boy came just after them.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. That's right.
By the way, is Jack still alive?
Yes, he is. Well, he kind of retired and became almost like a monk. He embraced the Roman Catholic faith.
He did, huh?
And he's a lovely man. I love him to death, actually. And I meet him occasionally. We bump into each other. Well, but I owe him so much. He offered me a chance to... You know, you were talking about not being an impersonator. When I did the TV show, he looked at me and he said, okay, two things. Get rid of the sideburns, and you cannot play guitar. Do not have that guitar. And I went, what? And he said, no, it's just too much like Elvis. I'm not going to have that on my show.
Smart
man.
Said,
and I said, well, I won't know what to do. He said, I'll tell you. And do you know what? He gave me all kind of shapes and movements and the way of looking at the camera. And he was fantastically influential for me. I use the word lucky advisedly, because it's not just good fortune, it's just that I feel lucky sometimes. Well, and meeting people like that is, maybe we can call it fortunate.
Well, destiny, I call it destiny.
Destiny as well, but whatever it is, it's being there when that is offered and being able to grab it.
Well, next time you see Jack, and tell him Charlie Gracie's still alive and he sends his best.
He will be thrilled, because he is such a rock and roll fan, always was and always will be.
Now, Dad, when was the last time you saw Sir Cliff perform? Do you recall?
It's got to be at least 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Was it in London?
In London, yes.
Was it at the Hammersmith Odeon, do you remember?
I believe it was, yes. As a matter of fact, the disc jockey, I think his name was Reed. I can't think of his first name. Anyway, we sat
Mike Reed.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, I can't remember what I ate yesterday, but I remember his name.
Mike Reed's a very famous DJ in England.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, and that particular venue is one of the best rock and roll venues. It's now become... It's called the Labatt Apollo, and I've noticed that they still have music shows there, but a lot of comedians play there. Even though I think it's about 4,000 seater.
Wow!
I would have thought that would be a bit big for an intimate comedy show, but it seems to work, and it still has rock and roll shows. But it was the famous place. It was the most favorite place to work as well.
Well, thanks to Mike, it gave us an opportunity for you and I to meet and to see you perform, and that was opened the door at least so we could have this conversation today.
Indeed. And we're so privileged to be having.
Oh, absolutely. A pleasure.
Oh, listen, it's my pleasure. Honestly, I can't believe I'm talking to a legend like this, because I lived and worked for, that moment when it would happen for me. Well, because of what I'd heard, because of all your music. So it was fantastic. I love it. I love being part of the club.
Well, let me just say this as one of the pioneers, whatever little bit I've contributed to music. When I first toured England in 57 and 58, I played the Variety Theatre. Now, I work with what they call a pit orchestra. People don't even know what a pit orchestra is anymore. I had no band behind me. I stood up there alone with the microphone, and there was no playback. I couldn't hear it. You sang, and the voice came from the back of the theater,
Yes.
And, so when I meet the guys that became famous after I became famous, they all tell me, Charlie, we owe you a lot, because how the hell did you do it? It was tough. I used to spit blood at the end of the night screaming. I felt like Sophie Tucker,
I know. Well, the funny thing is, Charlie, you reminded me, when I started in 58, and the first shows that my band and I did, we were on the same kind of shows. We had, fire dancers.
Yes.
Dog acts.
Acrobats.
It was like the live Ed Sullivan show.
Well, it was the end of vaudeville.
Yep.
And the beginning of rock and roll. And they kind of blended us in. Yeah. And they would use a rock and roll name like yours to be the top of the bill.
Yep. Yeah,
and you're right. The mics were, I always say, well, they weren't. They were mics, but they ran on gas. I mean, it's so old. And I said, they said, what about lighting? I said, we had lighting, but it was just simply on or off.
Well, you know, the funny thing about as we go back and reminisce about our youth. You know, I never forget when I played Sunday night at the Palladium in Blackpool.
Oh yeah.
And guess who was my supporting act? Shirley Bassey.
Goldfinger.
My God, you know, she became such a superstar, you know. And of course, I met the original rocker there, the kid with the blonde hair.
Tommy Steele?
Tommy Steele for the first
Tommy
time.
Steele,
Yeah.
He was the first in Britain to make it before me. He was about a year and a half up before I made it.
Yes.
And he got discovered in a coffee bar in London called the Two Eyes Coffee Bar. And I remember when I was still amateur and I got my drummer, my school friend drummer, and a couple of other guys, we went and played at the Two Eyes. And we were so disgusted because after a week, nobody recognized us. Nobody found us, except one girl whose name was Jan Vane, and she said, "I'd like to start a fan club for you." I said, "Well, we don't have any fans." She said, "You have now, me." So we started off with one fan, and she ran a fan club for me, and it became a huge, great thing after about 3 or 4 years. So yeah, Tommy Steele was the one that kicked it off in Britain, and
yeah. I mean, as a matter of fact, I remember he was going out with his now current wife. They were just engaged or just about to be married. Isn't that funny? I think he's still married to the same girl all these years.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Marvelous.
I haven't seen Tommy for ages. I'm not even sure what he does because he moved from the rock and roll world into the theater world.
Yes, I know.
And I went to see him on stage. He was fantastic.
Yep.
You know, when he did these shows like Half a Sixpence, they were big successes.
Yes.
I don't know whether they went to Broadway. He was one of these performers. He would never walk if he could run to the other end of the stage.
Exciting. Another exciting talent.
Energetic. He was fantastic.
Well, you know what? Whatever you put in is what you get out. I always said that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Now, neither one of you guys have any intentions to retire from what I read. Dad, I know you don't. And Sir Cliff, I understand you want to keep going.
I don't know about you, Charlie. I don't. That's not really a word I'd like to use. What I try to do is stop. Like, for instance, I finished in July, and I have stopped. And I know that I've already got plans to do the tour next year, and then after that, I'm going to stop again. And then I'll just think, what do I want to do?
Sure.
I might not want to do anything for a few months, and I won't. But I've got a feeling that if this album makes it, I'll need to rush in and do Volume 2.
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, I think I personally, if I had anything to do with it, would make it. But you know what? It's got to be heard. It's the old. If you could have the greatest product in the world, if nobody hears it, nobody buys it.
Nobody buys it. That's right. Yep, you're absolutely right. So I mean, I can only be a terribly grateful artist here. I get the chance to have to talk about it here now today.
Well, we're going to plug it here in the States.
Absolutely.
We don't have a 1 million watt station, but we have a 5 or 6 million listening audience in this Delaware Valley. So we'll let them know about it.
And again, we thank you so much, Sir Cliff. Again, the CD is called The Fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook. It's available on the Rhino label. You can order this thing at Amazon.com, and you'll hear some great songs that Cliff does on Little Richard, Charlie Gracie, of course, Johnny Ray, Buddy Holly, Rick Nelson, Chuck Berry, Roy Hamilton, Brian Hyland, Bobby Darin, and it's a splendid product. We love it.
And before we say goodbye,
yes, indeed,
let's. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sir Cliff. Happy birthday to you. All the best.
Thank you so much. That was fabulous.
And listen, since I'm older than you, I could say, and many more, kid.
Listen, thank you both for the time and your interest. I'm so thrilled and excited about the whole thing. And look, Charlie, I'll say goodbye and say I'll see you in the charts.
Okay, and God willing, when next time I'm in London, if you're there and we get to meet, we'll have some fish and chips.
Cool.
That would be fantastic. You can have the fish and chips. I'll have something else. If you can bring me over a meatloaf, that would be
that's easy.
Listen, we're Italian American. I'll bring you some braciole and some meatballs and stuff. My wife's a great cook, you know.
That's great.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you so much.
Ta-da.
And there goes Joe, one of the true superstars in this industry.
Yes.
That man has sold over 300 million records.
Wow.
Incredible. Yeah.
300 million?
It boggles the mind. Indeed it does.